Hello, hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. I'm Levi. How's it going? You okay? I hope you're good. I hope you had a nice week, and I hope you got some cool stuff coming up to you this week. I've been very, very busy. Um, Comedy's been going good. Did some non-comedy creative work as well, which is quite nice, and it's been very helpful financially to get that. And actually, I just spoke with my therapist maybe like yesterday. So as I'm recording this on Saturday, it's on Friday. I think I spoke with my therapist on Friday, or maybe it was Thursday. Yeah, no, it was Thursday. And I was telling her about how I've been busy, but I want to say like in a good way because I didn't have enough, or I didn't really have enough time to be as upset or like as worried about other situations like with the day job thing or like financial stuff going on. It was pretty much just just you got to do this thing, and then another day comes, and then he's got like, oh, you got your day job to worry about, and then you've got some uni work, and then you've got a gig tonight. And then the very exciting news are for everyone who's listening from London that in on April 16th I'm doing a compilation. I'm a part of a compilation show with another three friends of mine, and we're gonna do 20 minutes each, just trying out stuff. It's going to be recorded as well, and that's super cool, and that's really exciting. And basically, we've been working for that for the past few weeks, and then we've got the poster is coming out soon. So for anyone again listening, just check out my socials to basically see the poster. I hope you like it. It's a pretty cool idea. I don't want to give it away, but I think it looks fun. And yeah, so you see, I've got a lot of things to look forward to, even podcast wise. I've been recording with some really cool people. You'll see what I talk about from the conversation with Joe today, and even like the episode in the last couple of weeks, months, etc. They have been amazing. And then I've got I've got the same amount of like awesomeness level of people, wholesomeness level of people coming on the pod, and that's amazing. I don't know, when I started this, I didn't think I'd get to speak with these people, you know and I get to release episodes with them and stuff like this, and be able to kind of like fit in their schedules, and get this time. And now I did, and it's kind of it's so cool. And it's like, well, what's next? Like, what am I um, going to do next? But then I get excited when I have to like put the episodes together and think, oh, this is going to be amazing. I've got so and so, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to hear from them. How cool is that? Um, so yeah, you see, it's again, it's still a very challenging period. I'm still adjusting to the new part-time job, and I'm still trying to basically, like, I'm still like fighting with my old employer over um, some issues, and trying to get that fixed. But I'm very hopeful. I don't think I don't think that the way I felt in the last couple of weeks I felt in a very long time, in regards to almost feeling like, yeah, it's worth going through this like rougher time, or it's worth going through these, I guess, more like sleepless nights, or early starts and late finishes, because I can see the vision. I can look forward to whatever it's about to come. And I know that as I say it, last night and the last couple of nights, actually, I kind of struggled again with my nightmares. It's just quite weird. I don't know where it's coming from. Although as I say that, I'm quite mindful that 18th of March and 24th of March were at my parents' birthdays, and neither of them is around anymore. And I do, for example, I know that the nightmares I had last night, for example, it was actually about them. It was about missing my parents and wishing to be with them. And I think what happened was actually in this dream nightmare thing that I woke up crying from, is that I think I was spending time with them, and then it's almost like we were just chilling, and then I realized that, oh, if I leave now, I'm never gonna see them again. I felt like, oh, this is the last time we are gonna be together. And I just started crying at first in my dream, and then I woke up because I think I was actually being loud and disturbing my partner's sleep and stuff like this. But yeah, you know. So I guess this is why. And as I say this, I don't have a script, by the way. So whatever I'm telling you is just however it comes out of my mouth onto this microphone. I don't think I felt as good about all the things that I have done in the last couple of years, personally and comedy and all this stuff. And I'm like, the thing that I wish for now is kind of just for my parents to see it, because then I'm sure they would have loved seeing the things that I'm doing now. Seeing what I've got. Although I'm again going through a difficult time to an extent, but still, uh, but yeah, that's it. That's the sort of things that are going through my mind at the moment. But I feel like I've spoke to you enough before I put up before you get to listen to my conversation with Joe. He's got a lot of cool things to say. It was an amazing conversation. We met a few weeks before we gigged together a few weeks before we recorded this podcast, and it was a great experience. And then to get to speak with him again and have it on record and being able to share it with you, it's something that I'm really grateful for, and very very I don't usually use the word proud. I don't know why, but I am proud of. And look, you should check out Joe's work, because he's not only a very good comedian, very funny comedian. He's also he's got he's directing, and he's got a producing company, and at least one of the films that he's released recently, he's got a lot of success, and he's doing very well. And he's got some, like, he posted some stuff last week when he was at this viewing of the movie, and there were, I think he was like the only independent producer, or at least one of the very few independent producers to be nominated for those awards, in a, I guess, time and place where everything has to be kind of produced by like a big brand like Netflix or Disney, Paramount, whatever it is there, to it kind of, I'd like to think, and I'd like to say, it feels more special, because it shows that you can do good stuff, and you can do really well without, on your own, or like with your own, no, well, you can basically be in charge of what you're doing, and you can get it done. And I don't know what else I'm trying to say, but I'm just gonna let you enjoy my conversation with Joe. Yeah, enjoy. Okay, Joe. Hello. How's it going?
I'm good. Levi, how do you say your name?
It's I don't mind actually. I'm happy either way.
My boy is Levi.
No way.
Yeah. There's
Nice.
not
How old
many.
is he?
He's 4. Yeah,
Oh, that's a cool name.
yeah. I think it is a really cool name. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I think well, the thing is always I get asked about the
Shit.
name, and it's actually my name in my ID is Liviu, but my mom used to call me Levi when I was at school or like when I was a kid. I never knew why until I was like 15. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. I'll turn off my camera just in case because I think that might be the reason why it's disconnecting sometimes. The internet might be low.
I did loads of work outside. So you can hear that.
That's okay because I can block that later. Don't worry.
So
Okay. Hopefully, yeah. So no, I was gonna say that mom used to call me my mom used to call me Levi when I was a kid,
yeah.
and I never understood why. Only years later, I think like when I was a teenager, I found out about that like our grandma was Jewish. Yeah, and but then my name in my photo ID is like it's Liviu, and then I go by either Levi or Levi when I speak with. I think when I speak with people at like the synagogue and stuff like this, I'm like Levi. But then in comedy, I went with Levi mostly because I hated people butchering my Romanian name.
It's nice to have a versatile name. When I was younger, I was Joseph. I don't know why. And I think Joe. When I started doing comedy, I was Joe. It seemed less formal.
Have you noticed because I think with me it's almost as if like Levi is like Levi or Liviu is the responsible one, and then Levi is the comedian, is the guy who can like mess around and it's more acceptable.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, because I feel like every time I'm in a conversation and I'm like, say, like work, like day job stuff or like studying, and
Yeah,
people are like Levi, I'm like, yeah, I gotta be professional now. While if I'm, introducing myself as Levi, you'd be like, he's a clown, whatever.
yeah. It's interesting. I've got 2 kids, and Levi is the more silly one. I don't know what that says.
Is he also the youngest, or
He's the youngest. Yeah, I've got 4-year-old and a 9-year-old.
nice?
Yeah.
What's it like being, having them and like doing also comedy and being out and about a lot?
It works out really well, you know. I was speaking to a few comedian dads before I became a dad, and they always said it worked really well. And they're right. It's I leave when they're almost in bed. I mainly do gigs in London, or I don't like traveling too much now. So because I won't get to see them, but I'm able to sort of take them to school, pick them up from school. I'm probably around more than most dads, I think.
That's so cool. And if you don't mind me asking, because which part of London are you?
I'm North London, Barnet.
Barnet, no way. I did a gig there on a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, it's handy. There's quite a few gigs here actually.
And are you originally from Barnet?
Not far. I'm from Holloway, Camden, so I just had to move a little bit further out to get a bigger place.
I used to live on Holloway Road the first time I moved to
I grew up
London.
I grew up in Holloway.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it like?
It's very mixed. I mean, as you know, one road can be really posh, one road can be really rough, and it actually makes you sort of versatile. You have to be able to, I can sort of put on the posh voice, and then all of a sudden, become a bit Cockney. You have to adapt quite quickly, which is probably, it helps for comedy. I think definitely.
Well, so do you actually interesting? That's very interesting. You say that because do you still find yourself having to adapt? I guess your like voice or accent even now when you go and do gigs, or is it not as much?
Yeah, do you know what I do? Well, you do all sorts of gigs. You get all sorts of crowds, and I do all sorts of comedy. I do a character who's a bit posh sometimes, and then I do. It's literally a character act, and then yes, sometimes I host most of the time, and you need to Yeah, I think you need to be able to adapt when you host to different kinds of interactions. And having that sort of upbringing in a very mixed area, I think actually really helps. I've never thought about it, but I went to a very mixed school in Holloway, and the intake was very sort of representative of sort of a London or audience. So it was very multicultural, and I think it stood me in good stead for doing comedy. Definitely, I'm able to adapt a bit.
And was like when you were at school, did you also like an artistic kid, or when did you start? Because I know you do
Yeah.
poetry. You've directed very successful movie by the sounds of it, and then you're also a comedian. So then, were there signs of it when you were at school, or when did you? I guess I want to say fell into that path, but I don't know. I don't know how to say it right. Sorry.
Yeah, I had a very I went to a state school, but it was very creative. Like my art teacher was really inspiring. He was this Greek guy who was very charismatic and, really encouraged us all to be really creative. So I was really into art and I was into acting. I did a bit of acting from quite a young age. I think when you're young or many years ago, you don't see comedy as a career path. You don't grow up. I don't think anyone really grows up thinking they're going to be a comedian. It's quite an arrogant thing to do. I loved films, but I think a lot of people do. And I love TV, and I was really into design. And I started studying animation at university, and then got more into the film side, and then sort of started doing stand up after that. Yeah, so it sort of evolved.
No way. So, did you study animation in London?
I studied it at Bournemouth Arts Institute. I think it's called. I don't know if it's. I think it's called the Arts Institute of Bournemouth now. I don't know, but it was. It's in Bournemouth. It's quite a famous course. There's only There's only sort of a handful of people who are sort of allowed on the course each year.
No way.
I was quite lucky to get on, and then I made an animation that sort of went around the film festivals and did really well. And one of them was the festival that it got to was the Edinburgh Film Festival, and then when I went up there, started watching some comedy and got into comedy, and then started doing that as well. But yeah, I've been making films sort of since university.
No way. So wait. So you were saying that you got into this animation course. You obviously you've done your first, like. Is it correct to say animation movie?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. You've
3 minutes,
sorry.
but
So you've done this like animation movie. You took it to Edinburgh, and then by watching people there, you were like, oh, actually, I could. Did you write jokes, I guess, or did you actually even consider doing stand up at any point before this, like you being in university and you being in Edinburgh?
I don't ever think. I mean, I love doing stand up. I love character stuff actually more than anything. I love doing accents, and I love sort of writing comedy. And I think doing my animation course, I think a lot of animation is comedy, and I really got in. When you're an animator, you're like the performer. You sort of do everything when you do animation, but you are performing, which is kind of a weird thing to sort of explain. But you have to understand how to sort of act funny, and so maybe that sort of got me into it a little bit. And then after leaving university, there's so much sort of pressure. I mean, I don't know if you feel like this. You get so much into pressure doing what you studied, and everyone just sort of became an animator, and I didn't necessarily want to do that. It was quite a full on thing, animation. I was we were probably the only course at university that was sort of doing it from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. It was so intense, so I needed a bit of a break, and I sort of found comedy a little bit after that, and then started doing trying that out, and then sort of fell in love with it from there.
But this is again, yeah, I feel like the thing that you talked about, like the pressure of, having to say, again, study something and then you must stick with what you've done. I think that's, at least I feel very similar way. I actually feel like when I first went to like my higher studies, and then I ended up not doing what I studied, I felt like the worst person in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, oh God, why did I waste all this time? And then I wasted I did something like, oh my God, it was, because I don't even know the translation for it, but it was basically, I was meant to be like a forest ranger.
Wow.
Yeah, but the thing is, because I feel like my mom always wanted to see me in a uniform, but I feel like the forest ranger was like the least lesser of the uniform. With all the respect to any forest ranger listening to this, uh, it was like the least of the uniforms, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I've never been a forest ranger. I'm not really comfortable walking in a forest anyway. But coming back to this, yeah, I was like, oh my God, I hate myself for this. But you sound quite like how did you, because you sound like such a like versatile person, because like you sound like you're doing a lot of stuff if you look at it, at least for me as an outsider. How do you, because I also like, did you, because you're talking about the pressure of like, oh, I have to do what I've studied, but then on top of that, what was it like then to like, yeah, what did you feel like when you were, oh, actually I don't feel like I want to do animation, but then in the period before you, I guess, discovered comedy, if I may say that, or like before you thought of giving that, what did it feel like when you were, oh God, actually, what's next?
Do you know what? It's interesting. More recently, I'm getting back into animation. Like in lockdown, I started animating a bit more again. I'm making films and incorporating my animation. And I've got an animation TV show in development from doing some of those in lockdown. Yeah, and it does sort of teach you a lot of different skills. I was lucky in that animation involves a lot of different things. As I said, you've got to sort of be the actor. You've got to be able to draw. You've got to direct. You've got to be able to do kind of everything when you do animation. Everything in that world, and timing and all of that, and edit. So it did give me a lot of skills. And I went on to do a bit of film stuff and do a bit of acting and do a bit of comedy, which I think probably comes from doing animation. Definitely animation kind of helped. So I don't feel too guilty. I don't feel like I wasted my time, even though kind of everyone on the course that I was on is just doing animation. I kind of but doing lots of different things kind of helps me. I mean, sometimes stand up can be a tough job. You sometimes don't work every day, so it's nice to be able to get some money doing other things. I think people struggle with it because they like to put you in a box. Agents and the comedy industry like to sort of go, but what are you? And some like one more than the other. As I said, I do character comedy as well. So I had an agent who really loved my character more than my stand up. Um, it was really awkward. I think I met with him and he went, I love your character. Joe's all right, but I love your character. Well, I am Joe. I know how to take that. But yeah, I think it helps being able to do different things financially anyway.
And that was one of the things I was gonna ask as well about how do you, I guess, how did you even like, I guess I don't want to say like, is cope the right word, but basically how did you feel with like, again, we had the financial aspect of like, oh actually, and sorry, actually I'm gonna ask you two questions. Sorry to be annoying, but the question, yeah, one is like, how did you manage to no, I guess not get like overwhelmed by the financial aspect of I need to like start working because I've graduated or like I finished this, and then on top of that, now when you are doing so, again, when you said like you don't want to be put in a box, which sounds brilliant, but then what's it like when you say you've done stand up and then now you're taking a break from it because you're doing something else, and then like you're talking about animation when you didn't do it or you didn't do it as much for a while, and then during lockdown you did it more. Did you feel, like what did it feel like on those periods when you were actually, having to go back to another thing? So
Yes.
when you had to change lines, I guess, or like focuses, what did that feel like?
I think it's really helpful because, I don't know if you feel the same with stand up. I fall in and out of love with stand up. You can have a tough gig. Sorry, they're doing roadworks suddenly right outside my house.
That's all good, don't worry.
That's always the way. But yes, I did. You're able to switch from one to the other, which is nice because, stand up you do in the evenings. So it means in the daytime, I can do other stuff. I can do my film stuff. I can do animation stuff. And it means I don't really get bored. So it's nice sort of mentally being able to do different things. And obviously financially, if I'm struggling at one, then I can do the other. So I think it kind of helps sort of mentally and financially. I mean, definitely helped in lockdown when we couldn't do stand-up.
Yeah, no, of course. And then I was even thinking, did I guess a lot change in the regards of how you feel about the future? I'm talking from like any experience, like I guess like anxiety of some kind, where again at the beginning you're like, oh well, again I need to have something, to now where you kind of, I don't know, like do you have a different approach from how you felt about jobs and like
Yeah.
changing trajectories and stuff like this when you were just again like a young comic and a young like a new comic, a new animator?
Yes. Yeah. It does change. You've got to be in control, I think, because. But then also there's the issue of the supply and demand. You can't get too upset if you're not wanted for a job. I do acting as well, and if I get an acting job, I have to see that as a bonus. I can't sort of rely on it because it's out of my hands. Which is why I sort of started making my own stuff again. I think it was sort of 5-10 years ago, and in lockdown I sort of did it a lot more. I sort of decided to just get a lot of the equipment and just make it, because I had shows in development and they weren't sort of happening. And I think control is a big thing. And I think that's the great thing about stand-up. You can just do it. And I think that helps. I mean, I think if I was giving anyone advice, making sure that you're in control. And I think now, with social media, you can make your own things and build your own audience. And that really helps.
What do you always like a responsible individual? Because by the sounds of it now, it sounds like you're you're responsible, right? But were you always like this, or is it also something that you've developed with time?
Becoming a dad accelerates the need for money. So, that sort of, it does sort of change your attitude a little bit. I've always sort of been very driven. When I was at film school, it was film and animation school. They were very good in kind of teaching us to map out a 5-year plan. And, and that was really helpful, I think. It was a task we had to do. And it sort of, teaching you to kind of be in control. And I think obviously doing animation sort of made me very kind of hardworking. So and it's so competitive, comedy and film. That you kind of have to constantly be working on your stuff. Yeah.
Interesting, and I think you were saying something earlier about how there are the awareness of like again, you gave the example of like acting jobs where like it's kind of like it's out of your hands because you're really not in control of it. But then, what did it feel like to I guess in a way like make peace with that, or like how did you feel of of going, even because I know for example from my personal experience with stand up comedy where like I apply for like so much stuff and then you get rejected for like most of it, or like you don't even get rejected but you get like no replies because someone else has got it. So then how did you make peace, or like how did you learn to get to the point where like, hey, it's just the way it is? Sometimes you get the stuff that you want, sometimes you don't, but like you said, there are in other ways, like you said with social media, you're a bit more in control, you can control your destiny, but you still need someone to pick you at certain times.
It's a really good question. I've had a lot of TV shows in development and they haven't happened. There's so much rejection in what we do. I mean, every joke you do, every few seconds you're judged, and I think that helps. I think you develop a bit of a thick skin from doing stand up because you can't react when a joke doesn't work. You can't just get angry. You have to be able to put on a brave face, and so I think doing stand up sort of helps you deal with rejection. I also think talking to other stand-ups is really important because we're all in the same boat. And what you just said about getting rejection and not getting gigs, that happens to all of us. And just knowing that helps, I think. But it still doesn't. It's still hard. I mean, I've been penciled for I think it's 3 adverts in the last week, and it's so much money that you try not to think about it. I've been doing it for so long as well. I've been doing stand up. Next month I'll be doing stand up for oh my god, for 20 years.
What? No.
Yeah, it's my 20-year anniversary coming up, and
Happy anniversary! Sorry,
thank you.
sorry to interrupt. Happy anniversary! That's so cool, man.
Yeah, but you're full of hope when you start, and you have ideas of what you want, and it does change. And at the moment, I'm very much like just trying to earn a living as best I can, really. I mean, when I started out, I had aspirations of sort of fame and fortune. You have therapy as well. That helps, which I would recommend. Although I do feel like stand-up can be a form of therapy. Yeah, but it's hard to not take it personally, I think. You do. I do have moments going, maybe it's because I'm Jewish. But I think, you do have moments of that sort of paranoia. But, talking to friends and comedians and, all of that sort of helps, I think.
And because you're talking about how, and again, once again, congratulations! It's a huge achievement. 20 years in the field of stand up comedy, which is, I mean, from my 3.5, I can tell you I'm tired so much, so many times. But now you were talking about, like, again, doing it, yeah, going through the 20 years anniversary. And then I was curious, like, what do you feel like when you say you hear people? Because, like, I remember because you were talking about actually making a 5-year plan as well, like something that you've learned when you were at university. But now you get to see many people, or, like, I imagine you'd see, like, still people at, like, shows and stuff like this who are making some plans that might be wildly unrealistic. Like, how do you feel when you hear, like, I don't know, do you, like, I guess, like, roll your eyes internally, or you're like, hey, wait until reach the deep water, or, like, the higher waters, or, like, what does it feel now, I guess, speaking or, like, listening to someone who's 20 years behind you, or, like, again, even 10 or anything like that?
It changes. I mean, it's changed so much in the last 20 years with social media. You can do what you want now. You're in control. There was just about YouTube. I think YouTube had started, but if you wanted to see comedy, you had to go to comedy. It was very much the agents and the TV producers had so much power. Whereas now you just have to, you can upload a clip. There are comedians, people who call themselves comedians, who don't even do stand-up comedy. Everyone's a comedian now, can be. So it's totally changed. I mean, if someone wants to do it, they can do it. And that's the most amazing thing. I feel overwhelmed at the moment, if I'm honest. Sometimes I've got, as you said, I do so much. I wake up and I go, God, what should I do today? I've got a massive to-do list. And I find that sort of difficult at the moment. I learned to delegate. That's a big one. I need to delegate a bit more. I've got a production company, and we film a variety of things, and I've got a great team of camera people who now I sort of trust to go and do that, and editors. So that's exciting, and that's kind of probably the next step is doing more production stuff and being a bit more hands off and just overseeing.
That, thank you for the honesty. Talking about, like, how it feels overwhelming at times as such.
Yeah.
I feel like the first, as an outsider, you always just like, oh, you got a lot going on. How great is that? Well done. But then when you're actually the person who's got the lot going on, it's a bit like, yeah, it's cool. You don't want to be, what's the word, ungrateful, but also you're like, oh God. But my question was, what I wanted to ask you actually was about how you talked about, like, the change where, when you wanted to see comedy, you see comedy in a club. And then you talked about how I feel like there was a power shift where, there were producers and, people like agents were, like, in charge more. And I guess, because you were talking even before, where did you notice that now it's easier for you to to be like, again, to not be able to be, I guess, put in a box where you're like, are you either an animator, are you either a stand-up comedian, or are you an actor, or are you a director, are you, did you notice that because of those changes where, you're, I guess, more in control of your fate,
Mm.
did you notice that then now it feels better, or the same, or worse?
It's better for individuals. It's worse for TV because advertising is going towards individuals, and it's worse probably for agents in some ways because they have less control. So it's an exciting time for people who want to make comedy content. I think it's weird for live stand up because you'll have people who are very popular online that are getting more gigs, that they're not necessarily better than the live comics. The live comics, there are amazing live comics that can't get their stuff to work online, and I think it's difficult for people like that. And I really feel for a lot of live comics. Some incredible live comics that are struggling, I think, and that that makes me a bit sad. I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm my struggle really is because I do so much, and I find it difficult online. Anyone who follows me online knows that I do lots of different things, and it probably doesn't help my social media because I know what you're supposed to do on social media. I know you're supposed to do one thing and just focus on that one thing. It's sort of, I find that very difficult.
I guess you say that, but I agree with you, but I feel like it's such a weird dynamic thing where like I also like I try to do stand up stuff, but then I do the podcast work, and I've noticed that like the podcast doesn't do anywhere near as well in regards of promotion. If anything, I feel like I got more listeners on the podcast, like active listeners, but then when I post podcast stuff, you actually get less traction than the comedy.
Really?
And then I feel like it's just so, I don't know, like I feel like, yeah, sometimes I guess it's like I pick my hair. Is that the saying? Where I'm just like, what is happening in it?
Scratch my head.
Sorry, scratch my head. Yes, I scratch my head, and what's happening here?
Yeah, I think also there is a difference between what we want to do and what our audience want us to do. And I've always found that I sometimes teach comedy to new comedians. That's the thing I always say. So there's a difference between what we want to do and what the audience want us to do. And I find that with me, both in stand up and online, there's stuff I love that doesn't hit, and there's stuff where I think, oh, that was rubbish, and it does well. It's annoying, but yeah, and that's the same for when we're on stage. I like certain comedy, and I like jokes. I like silly jokes, but when I do silly jokes, it doesn't seem to hit as well sometimes as if I do a story where I'm the idiot. People tend to enjoy that a bit more. It's annoying.
But you see, the thing is, because I always wondered, I'm actually quite curious now what's your take on this, because obviously you're talking about how it's about like what like the audience wants, and finding that, but then it's almost like with social media, it's hard even to tell what the audience wants, because you can't reach them in the first place, because first you have to break this barrier of like, oh, what does like an algorithm want,
Yeah.
because the algorithm thinks that the audience wants this, and then once the algorithm goes like, it's good for us, then you go, but then once you get in front of the audience, it might actually not be what they want. So I feel like it doesn't, do you feel like it adds almost like a layer of questions where now you don't have to almost cater for one audience, you have to actually cater for like two types of audiences and hope that those audiences overlap?
Yeah, and there's also, in some ways, there's so many different kinds of audiences, isn't there? I keep thinking, should I have about 5 different Instagram, should I have channels? I've got a production company and, stand up and film and animation, all this. It is overwhelming, and we live in an incredible time where we've got control, and that is it is really nice, but it also is. It's quite a stressful time, I think.
And you were talking about like stressful times. You were talking about how even now you said like you technically like, oh, should I have like 5 Instagram?
Yeah.
Then you said how one of the things, and please correct me if I heard it wrong, but you were saying how it almost like it helped you that more recently you've learned how to, or like you've delegated better.
Mm.
Or you no, actually, I think you said something that between the lines of like I trust myself to delegate better, or like I do better at. How did you? Because again, like it sounds like for the past 20 years at least, you've been like, oh, I'm doing this, and I'm also doing this, and I'm also doing this thing.
Yeah.
And then at what point did you actually start going, oh, actually, I need to start, trusting other people. Like I need to bring, I need to share this responsibility in one way or another to
Yeah.
make it work.
Um, well, I'm making some film. I'm making a lot of films with my production company, and it's just finding the right people. I think, like, I made this film called Millwall Jew, and working with this editor. I mean, I still filmed it and directed it and produced it. So I don't know if this is a good example, but I found an editor. Sometimes I edit as well, but I found an editor that I really trusted, and that really helped. And it's doing really well. So that has encouraged me and made me realize that I can delegate a bit more.
It's funny you brought up the Millwall Jew movie because I wanted to ask you about it anyway.
Okay.
How did that come to creation? Like, did you? Because I know it's Ivor Dembina, right? Who's
Yeah.
the comedian who? But then, like, did you approach him? Did he approach you? How did you? Yeah, how did this become a movie, basically?
Well, I get approached quite a bit since I made a film about a comedian. I was with another comedian called Danny Ward, but we made a film about a comedian who died on stage called Ian Cognito, and then it did really well. It did, yeah, and it's now on Amazon Prime. And after that, I had quite a few people wanting films. Made a film that Sean Walsh wrote that did amazingly well at festivals. And then, yeah, I keep getting comedians wanting a film. So I don't know if either came to me or I saw his show and I thought, oh, it's a good film. Sometimes I see a routine or a show and I think that would make a really good film. I made one with someone called Mike Gunn, who's got this amazing routine about feathers and death, and it's really lovely. And I remember watching it, going, "God, that's so visual." And we made it, and it did really well at festivals again. And so I've really I've got into I know the festival circuit now, and I work a lot with comedians, and I know stand up very well, and I know film, and I feel like it works really well for me. Working with comedians and turning their work into films. So yeah, I think I saw Ivor's show, filmed it, and then thought it was really interesting to make a film about it. I thought it was the perfect kind of subject matter to make a film about it. It's called Millwall Jew. It's about him being a Millwall fan and being Jewish, and I thought it was a funny combination and interesting. And I wanted to. The idea was to get him to do a show at Millwall about being Jewish. That was sort of the goal, and we sort of building up to that. And yeah, I've always been a fan of Ivor. I've always loved his comedy and found him interesting, and yeah, wanted to put that on film. Oh yeah, it's amazing that it's doing so well. It's an Oscar festival in LA, in Palm Springs. It's funny when something so British does well in LA, in America. It makes me feel good that I can get their work seen to a wider audience.
Interesting, because now I wanted to ask you when you said about like, oh, something so British, making it like in a worldwide stage.
Yeah.
Do you see that? I guess basically my question is around, because this is the thing. So just to give you a bit of backstory why I'm curious about what I'm about to ask. When I grew up in Romania, before I came in here, there wasn't a thing as like, oh, this is American comedy, this is British comedy, this is European comedy. It was kind of like, this is comedy, or like, this is action, this is drama, this is whatever it is. Again, it's just the genre, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then you I came to England, and then I was like, oh, actually, you have like the US office and the UK office, and they're, because this is UK humor and this is American humor.
Yeah.
And then do you notice that, like, how do you basically feel like almost when you make something, do you make it with like, this is gonna cater for British audience, or you just go like, oh, this is gonna cater for audiences? Or like,
Yeah.
how do you think this has started, or like how did this become a thing, or like how did you actually even come into it, where you're like, or when you heard it before the first time and you're like, oh, this is British, this is American, this is, you know.
Yeah. When I make something, when I go to make something, I need to know where it's going to end up and who the audience is. You need to figure out what the point of making it is, and know that platform. And I know the festival circuit really well now. I've been doing it for years, so I know what kind of does well. I know what does well at certain festivals. With this one, I wanted to make something, and I like making things that are interesting and funny. I know Ivor is funny, but I also think the Jewish identity people don't really understand it, and I wanted to show that and show the way he talks about it, and I thought that was important, especially now. And I didn't necessarily know whether it would do well as a film. I just knew it. I knew I'd make something that I wanted to make, and I think that's important, that you make something that you want to make and that you want to see. So that was I think that was my main motivation with this one. There's another film I'm making at the moment called Tinky Winky: My Story, about a comedian who played Tinky Winky and was fired, and he's kind of revealing his story and talking about what it was like being Tinky Winky. And I think that's more of a film that I know that everyone would be interested in. I love pitching it. I love sort of telling people about it because they're like, oh my God, I really want to watch that. So there's a slightly different motivation. I know that people will want to see that. So there's a bit of pressure there. I've been editing it for a long time. Whereas Millwall Jew is more making a film that I want to see and I think is important.
And then, when you're talking about like, how does this then go back into, the putting it together? How long did it take to go from like, oh, this is the idea of like, I would like to do something like this, to actually doing it? And then you were talking about how, you ended up like being, again, producing it and then directing it. And, you were talking about like how you managed to find someone that you trusted, or you believe that would be a great editor for the movie, or like editing team. I don't know what's the correct saying, but then how long do those? I guess how long does something? No, it's not something. Let's be like, how long did the Millwall Jew, for example, take from when you started the project to, I guess, obviously, to until you, I guess, even finished it, or like when you were like, okay, that's it, we're approaching the end.
I love doing documentaries. I make scripted stuff as well, but the great thing about documentaries is you don't have to totally picture it before you make it. I filmed his stand-up show and then had a think about how we're going to piece it together. It sort of happened quite organically. I went to his house. I play football with Ivor as well in South London near Millwall. So that was kind of quite an easy thing to do. There was some fun things that we found. Our journey from where he lives to where we play football overlooks the Millwall ground, so that was really nice. That we got some really nice shots there, and it just happened organically. Filming his show and then going to his house, hearing him talk about that, going to Millwall, and it was quite an easy one to do, sort of structurally. I had an editor in mind that I'd worked with recently who was amazing, and that was really important. It was we were very lucky, and he was very passionate about it as well. So kind of everything sort of seemed to come together. Sometimes it, doesn't come together, but it was one of those projects where he was available, wanted to do it, and was very good. Ivor's stuff worked really well, and we worked really well together. So it all sort of came together. I think in a few months. Didn't take that long really. It was 4 or 5 filming days, and then maybe a week edit overall. Yeah. Over the space of a month or two, and then coming back to Ivor and making sure that he was happy. Because I think when you make a film about someone, you want to make sure that, you know, they're happy with it. I mean, I played football with him last week, and he still moans, "Oh, you should have got this shot," you know, even though it's done really well. Comedians are it's such a personal thing, your comedy and your life, you know. I totally understand, and it helps, I think, that I understand it.
You were talking about this, and I was curious when. Oh my God, what was the question? Oh yeah, well, was Millwall in any way? Like, did you have to? Did you film anything at the ground, or did you actually get in touch with the Millwall like football club to help out with anything or offer any input, any insight, anything like that?
Yes, yeah. So we had a dialogue with them because we were going to do a show there. We ended up not doing a show there. We did some filming there, and they were aware of it. And yeah, there was an issue because they were potentially going to get relegated, so they were worried that doing a comedy show there might be wrong in the last week of the season. So we ended up not doing that. But yeah, there was a sort of dialogue and making sure that they were happy. And a lot of, weirdly, it's actually on, the film is online. People want to see it. It is on YouTube. And there's so many comments from Millwall fans. Weirdly, none from Jewish people. But Millwall fans love it. And that's really nice. It's very affectionate. It's an affectionate film for Jewish people and Millwall fans, but they particularly enjoy it, and that's
No, I mean it sounds like such a wonderful, idea, and I'm looking forward to watch it. I want, like, yeah. Even now, I'm even more like interested to check it out. It sounds amazing. And I was going to ask you about the. Oh my God, I had this question which I thought, oh, this could be the greatest question. But then now, it feels like I'm sitting on it, but I just can't find it. Jesus. I think it was something. Oh no, God. Okay, never mind. We'll move on. Oh yeah, I was gonna. Basically, the question was about how you're talking about how you get all these. You're working on those projects. You have these ideas, but then I imagine from like an idea to the fruition, and even like financial compensation, for example, it might take a while. So then, obviously, when you're again, especially like being like you're talking about like being a responsible person, being a parent as well, like having a family and everything.
yeah.
What, like, when again you wake up and or like you have this idea, and then how do you not, I guess, allow for any like stress to overtake, in that respect? Like, how can you, like, how do you know how to handle, all these like multiple tasks? And then you're like, okay, cool, I have this idea of a film, I put it together, but you don't know when the payday is going to be yet. Or if there even, I think, I imagine that in certain times you're like, is it going to be one? Like,
Yeah. It's that's why do you know what? That's a really, really good question. That's why it's helpful doing lots of things. So at the moment, stand up, I regularly do gigs, and that really helps because I can do a passion project in the day. And they say, there's a phrase, I think, in film, one and in comedy, I think, one for us and one for them. I'll do a gig for money, and then and also because I love it. But I'll do something. I'll do a passion project, and if that passion project makes money, then great. But I'm in a situation now where I'm really lucky that I can make stuff that I feel passionate about. I was working at a production company, and they were doing corporate films. So during the day, I was making corporate films, and I was so productive doing other stuff at that time because I was making these corporate films. I was so desperate to make fun films. So I had two feature films. It's mad. I had two feature films and a short film also in production at the same time. So, and this was like a year or two ago. So they came out a year ago. But I think because I was doing stuff for money, I was just desperate to do stuff that I'm proud of. And actually, it's really helped making that film about this comedian Ian Cognito. It relaxed me because it made me feel like I've done something that I'm proud of. I have an obsession with, I think a lot of comedians and creatives have an obsession with sort of legacy. And my granddad was an amazing town planner. He was really important. He got a CBE from the Queen for town planning.
Oh, wow.
I did a show about him. He survived the Holocaust and was a very important town planner. He was a town planner for London after the war, for Prague, for some of the most amazing cities in the world, Liverpool. And I did a show about him. And I always felt like he wasn't recognised. He was best friends with a very famous comedy actor. I did a show called The Story of Walter and Herbert about their friendship, and which is another film I'm meaning to make as well. But their story is incredible. But his best friend was famous and recognised as very important. And my granddad really wasn't, like, by people in the street. And when I did the show, everyone knew who his friend was, and no one had really heard of my granddad. And that annoyed me, and I was obsessed. I've always kind of been obsessed with being acknowledged, but I've sort of calmed down a bit since having a bit of therapy. That's helped. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I want to ask you now then about the therapy. When did you? I guess when did you start? Seeing a therapist, or like what was your introduction to? I guess even like mental health, or I imagine is it
Yeah.
CBT that you're.
Yeah, I did do CBT, but do you know what? I think making that film calmed me down because I felt like I've done something, it's out there that I'm proud of. I can relax a bit. So that really helped. And then, doing therapy made me not want to do stand-up as much for a long time. I mean, I still love doing it, but it made me less desperate for fame. So I don't really want to be famous, really. I just want to make good stuff at the moment. And I think it was the therapy that did it, and making this film. I feel like I got stuff out of my system. And also the need for just earning money and supporting a family, I think, is that stops you wanting to be famous and makes the money more important, I think.
And is that you still seeing someone now?
What's that? Seeing,
like a therapist?
Yeah, no. I only had a few sessions, but it did really help. It wasn't just the therapy; it's kind of my career trajectory. Doing stand up for so long as well, you do go through different periods. I think when you do stand up for 20 years, you start realizing that maybe you won't become mega famous, and maybe making a good living is kind of really important. And also I think having a variety of friends in the business, and realizing that sort of fame that everyone wants is not quite what it's cracked up to be. That I think being happy, for me, being financially okay kind of makes me happy, content.
It's just fair enough, because again, it's something that I can, I think I'd hope most people, or like, yeah, you kind of hope almost everyone in the world would see it in such a way where, as long as you're comfortable, then that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and also creatively, I'm doing what I want creatively, and I think that's really important. Yeah, as well.
And is your granddad still around?
No, he's not. No, there is the show. I did this show called The Story of Walter and Herbert, which I'm plugging again, but it's on Apple TV, I think. Oh, it's on various platforms, and it's kind of about his life and his friendship with the famous actor, and him kind of making a life for himself in the UK. Yeah, I think I made that. That was another one where I made that, and I felt like I dealt with some demons there.
And was he around when you, like, were you able to actually tell him that you're doing this, or did he like pass away a long time ago, or a longer time
I mean,
ago?
it was sort of the impetus for making it, and what I say in the shows is the last time I saw him, I sort of ignored him. I was 18 and I walked past him near my school, and I sort of ignored him, and I felt that guilt of sort of like ignoring him and not acknowledging him. And then sort of that was the impetus for making the show.
Wow.
Really. Yeah. So yeah, I was 18. But yeah, I wanted to make something to talk about his life, and so that more people sort of know who he was, because he did, his life was pretty amazing. So yeah, and I'd like to sort of make a documentary about it at some point.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, please. Well, I was gonna ask you now because I'm so grateful for, especially after we started talking. I'm like, oh my god, you're even busier than I thought you are. So I'm very grateful for you taking the time to speak with me. And now you were saying earlier, oh, I'm plugging this again. That's absolutely fine because I'm gonna ask you now anyway to please, like, yeah, plug as much as you'd like. Like, let people know where you're most active on social media. Let again people know where to find we and please we can do a recap because Millwall Jew is on available on YouTube.
It is. Yeah, yeah.
Walter and
The story of Walter and Herbert.
the story of Walter and Herbert. You say in Apple TV and
Yeah. And I've got 2 films on Amazon Prime that I made: Ian Cognito, A Life and Death on Stage, and Unstoppable Me. If you put my name into Amazon Prime.
perfect. And then yeah, what? Please let us know what's your social media handle and yeah, where are you most active if people want to see your stand up or even like yeah, stay in touch with any new work that's coming soon.
Yeah, I'm always putting clips up on Instagram. Joe Bor, that's probably one I use the most.
Perfect. Well, Joe, thank you so much for everything,
Thank you.
and good luck with again with everything. It sounds so cool, and I got my everything crossed for you. It works well, and you get to enjoy it, but like in a peaceful way.
Thank you. Thanks, Levi.
Levi, let's go with Levi because you're yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Cheers.
So, what do you think? Was it good? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? I hope it was good. And also, can we take just a second to acknowledge what a cool voice Joe has? I don't know if it's just me, but if it's not, there you go. That was a second to acknowledge. It was cool. Like when he speaks, I'm just like, yeah, please keep talking. This is very entertaining, regardless of whatever. I feel like he can talk about anything and I'll listen, which I think if you're my teachers, you'd kind of be very jealous of. Anyway, guys, thank you. Well, guys, people, folks, thank you all so much for listening. I feel like I've given you a bit of a heads up of like what's to come, and again, the biggest thing that's about to come from my end is the show on the 16th of April. But then make sure you check out the bio of this episode because I'll put Joe's social media handles on as well so that you can check out his work. And I've got a surprise for you later this week. So you don't have to wait until Monday for the next episode. It's going to come up on Thursday. Enjoy. But I hope you enjoyed this. And until then, from me, Pikal and Sarma, stay skillful. Goodbye.